welcome to We the People. This week, the Supreme Court reiterated that private unaided schools in Delhi built on land provided by the government must take permission for fee hikes. While the verdict is a shot in the arm for the Delhi government and it was met with cheers from parents who believe that schools are extorting them, it raises broader questions on the education policy for the country as a whole. Are the chances of getting a good education in India today equivalent to winning a lottery? While the right to an education is a fundamental right, in reality, India offers education of an acceptable quality only to those who can pay for it. And that could really depend on the economic strata that you're born into and perhaps even the neighborhood you live in. Now, this is not a Delhi-centric problem. This is symbolic of the crisis of education in the entire country. Study after study has highlighted the miserable quality of education in our government schools to the point where even the poor are willing to cut down on their meager expenses to send their children to private schools. Today on We the People, we're asking if the root problem is a limited supply of good private schools. Is over-regulating schools counterproductive in the long run, and can India afford that? Is it unacceptable for an educator to expect to make money in the field of education? And joining us today to discuss this from the AAP, we have Atishi Marlena. She is the advisor to the Education Minister, that's Manish Sisodia. He's also the Deputy Chief Minister. We have from the BJP, we have a lawyer, politician, mother. We have Pinky Anand, a social activist, poet, parent, that's Mr. Gohar Raza joining us. Atul, of course, you all know, former cricketer, current commentator. He's here as a concerned parent too. Anand Kumar, an educator from Bihar. Thank you especially. Neela Kaur from the Heritage School. And Kiran Bhatti from the Center for Policy Research. Gauri Ishwaran is the CEO of the Global Education and Leadership Foundation. She's the founder principal of the Sanskriti School. She also sits on the advisory board of the Shiv Nadar School. Atishi, let's start with you first. First and foremost, this seems to all boil down to a question of incentives, right? In today's age, there are services that are provided by the private sector, which in the past were provided by the public sector. Why is it that given we have such a shortage, a critical shortage of schools in the country today, an entrepreneur cannot set up a for-profit school? Is it unrealistic of you to expect that an educationist will go into the field out of the goodness of his heart?
As you said earlier, I don't think the root problem is a shortage of private schools. I think the root of the problem is the fact that across the country, there has been a total decline and deterioration of government schools. And I think over the past 2 decades especially, governments have actually let private schools rot. You often have a collusion between private schools and governments because so many private schools are actually owned by politicians across the country. And there's been several studies on it as well.
Correct.
And that is what really creates this crisis of supply.
How does not allowing new private schools come up solve the root problem, which you're saying is government schools who have deteriorated?
Eventually, this problem of shortage of supply is going to get resolved by actually improving the quality of public education. And that is really what governments, I believe, should focus on. As far as private schools are concerned, should entrepreneurs be allowed to open for-profit schools? This is an issue we need to discuss and debate. But the problem is that the law of the land currently states that education and health are not for profit. At least in Delhi, I can tell you.
That's not the case with hospitals. We allow hospitals to be for profit, so why not schools?
Yes, this is a good question. I think that this is a question that we really ought to be debating. But till we actually allow education to be for profit, one has to enforce the law. The second thing is that peculiarly in Delhi, all land that has been given by the government to set up these schools specifically states that schools cannot raise fees without the permission of the government. This is a policy that's been in existence for decades. It's just that no governments have chosen to implement it. And I'm sure there are lots of parents sitting here. They have really borne the brunt of it. Year after year after year, schools have just arbitrarily hiked their fees. And therefore, regulating the fees of private schools is important from the perspective of parents who have to then dish out this arbitrarily hiked fees.
All right, you mentioned changing the law. So let's bring in Pinky here with the central government. Pinky, it's easy to blame the Aam Aadmi Party for everything that's wrong in Delhi, but land actually comes under the central government. And why hasn't the government met the AAP government halfway, midway, when they've been trying to expand their schools? That's one. The basic problem here is that there are archaic state laws that say that a school if it has to get accreditation from the CBSE, it has to either be a non-profit trust or it has to be a society. Why doesn't the centre change things like that? Atishi says the law needs to be changed. Who will change the law? Is it not the centre? You have BJP-run governments in Maharashtra and Haryana that allow for-profit schools. So why wouldn't you make it across the board, across the country?
That's what you're saying. So the whole problem, or the whole question rather, is when there are state laws, what should be done? It is ultimately India as a federal structure, and we do have to go by that. So states have to take a conscious decision. It is not up to the central government to really debate or decide on that. As far as the central government is concerned, what the central government has laid down by way of law is the fact that you require permission. Private unaided schools require permission before they can hike their fees. And as Atishi says, it's been going on for decades without much observance. So really speaking, asking permission, I don't think that kind of crucifies anything, and things can go on. The larger question on whether you should have institutions for profit, educational institutions for profit or not is I think what is really important today, A. But more important than that is the fact that we need to have education in place, whether it is by private schools or whether it's by government schools. Talking about theorizing and policing and saying X is not supplied, or the AAP government saying the government is not supplied or the central government not supplied, that's not going to get you very far. Only 4 schools have been put up in Delhi, for example, in the last year. The question is, whatever the institutions are, whether they are public and can be improved and should be improved by all means, but in addition, the private unaided schools have not only an equal right to be there, but a duty to be there, so that children get education. I think that's the most important part of the functional situation.
Neeru, you're very brave to come on the show. You are being a standing example to your students that you should learn to stand up for what you believe in, even if it goes against to contrary public opinion. But the fact is here, you and schools like you are being painted out to be the villain here. And the message sent out by the AAP government is basically, and they're cheered by the public, the message is that schools like you will be shown your place.
Well, I don't know. That depends on the approach of the country. How does the country want to take education forward? Education certainly should be a concern of the government. But what is very important is the quality of education. And when we have the audits, which should be there, but what kind of audits? That should also include the qualitative assessment of a school. There are all kinds of people, all kinds of professions. You see these variations everywhere. All are not the same. Having said that, yet I believe that yes, there should be some amount of control on how schools operate. And
so why is there such a fight back then from schools?
See, there is if I talk about my school, for example, there is no fight back, but the request is that once we run a school and we have done, your audit has been done, then the school should be permitted to have the fee structure as per their expenses. So if we have been here for 15 years and we put a lot of effort for our school to give the kind of education, I think many parents will stand and vouch for that. Now, when you do that, you also need that this quality of education should sustain. If today there is a cut.
So you're saying this will lead to quality of education in schools going down?
Yes, it will lead to mediocrity in the schools.
Okay, you said, one second, you said the parents will decide parent support. Let's bring in a parent right now. Actually, we have Ashish Naredi, who's from the Hyderabad Parents Association. And according to some studies, Hyderabad schools charge the highest fees in the country. So Ashish, you've heard what Neela has had to say, that quality will come down if there is so much regulation. What do you have to say?
Absolutely
for parents?
not. I think this is a false dichotomy which is being propagated by the school managements. It is scaremongering at its worst. There is no proof that anyone can give that quality has come down in any school because of fee regulation. Let's take the classic example of Chennai or Tamil Nadu, where the fee was regulated in 2009. And if you look at the top schools survey of India, you will still find some of the best schools running in Chennai. So this is absolutely false. What I would also like to bring in at this point of time is to correct this basic misconception that schools are not allowed to make profit. By the Supreme Court judgment, schools are allowed to make profit. However, they are not allowed to profiteer.
This was the 2002. This
2002 all judgment Supreme Court
a reasonable
that,
surplus they were allowed.
Reasonable surplus, you are not allowed to profiteer. And if you look at the actual facts on the ground, you will see that today, and I can vouch for this being a businessman myself, schools has become the most profitable business in our country. There is no other business which offers as high a return as an educational institution and as a school. And I say this with full authenticity, with full data. This is a report presented by Anand Rathi and company, $45 billion opportunity private education in India.
But has that gap or that vacuum been filled because this vacuum has been created by public schools not keeping up to pace? But let's put your question across to Gauri Ishwaran. Gauri, the fact is that school owners, like hospitals, know that parents will bend over backwards when it comes to their children's future, right? According to a NASOCHAM study, private schools have increased their fees by 150% over the last decade. Why is it that schools should not be regulated? And especially, as somebody pointed out right in the beginning, these 295 or 300 so odd schools who have been given land on concessional rates by governments, why should they not be audited?
This regulation of fees of private schools, at least by the government of Delhi, has been there for a long time. And while I was there in Sanskriti school, we had to present our accounts every year and get permission.
But the demand wasn't as much in the past.
No,
it's been there for a long time. The situation has changed. The demand for education is so high, the supply is just not keeping up.
See, unless the government schools shape up and provide the kind of education they used to in the past, this question is not going to go away. So when there is this huge gap in demand and supply, then there will be people who will step in and take advantage of it. Because when you run a school, you have to pay the teachers well. The schools that charge less fees will not be paying the 6th pay commission. And I feel very strongly that the teacher community as it is has no status in society today. And on top of it, you expect the best and the brightest to go to teaching. If they get a salary on which they cannot even sustain a family, why would they go?
Let me put that question across. We have somebody who's done just that.
I want to make
go
that
ahead.
once you employ these teachers, then you have to also give increments every year. You have to have the non-planned expenditure of maintaining your school. So certain amount the fees have to be raised. The quantum is where your dispute comes in.
All right, you say the best and the brightest will not go into this field, but we have somebody who's done just that. I want you all to meet.
But he's probably an exception.
He is probably an exception, which is why we want. I want you all to meet Anand Kumar. He runs Super 30. What is that? It provides free coaching, free food, free accommodation to 30 students every year who are from the poorest strata of our society and helps them get into IITs. Now, Anandji, your father was a clerk in a post office, right? You got into Cambridge, but you could not go because you didn't have the funds. You studied math during the day and you made papads at night, which is what your mother was forced to do. This was business she had to run once your father died. Today, 350 students who have learnt under you have gotten admission into IIT and JEE. So when you hear the prices that are being charged for an education today, what does that make you feel like?
दरअसल में हमारे देश में जो रिजर्वेशन है उसकी चर्चाएं हमेशा होती है. कुछ लोग लॉजिक देते हैं पक्ष में रिजर्वेशन रहना चाहिए, कुछ लोग नहीं रहना चाहिए इसके पक्ष में देते हैं, लेकिन वास्तविक तौर में हमारा देश एक बड़ा रिजर्वेशन से गुजर रहा है जो अमीरों को प्राइवेट स्कूल में दिया जा रहा है. अमीरों के पास पैसे हैं जो अफोर्ड कर सकते हो, बड़े बड़े 5 स्टार होटल जैसे स्कूलों में जा रहे हैं, तो क्या ये एक रिजर्वेशन नहीं है? बहुत सारे लॉजिक देते हैं कि नहीं हमारे पास फैसिलिटी है, मल्टीमीडिया का यूज करते हैं, हम लोग का एसी क्लासरूम है. हम लोगों ने दिखाया है कि बहुत ज्यादा फैसिलिटी की जरूरत नहीं है, कि आपके स्कूल में, आपके विद्यालय में कितना जुनूनी छात्र है और आप कितना डेडिकेटेड है स्टूडेंट के लिए, ये महत्वपूर्ण है.
There's one great thing that he has said I'd like to emphasize, that to give education, what is important is the quality of the teachers and your curriculum. Having fancy buildings, AC buses, AC cars, that is actually not necessary.
Dr. Raza, what would you say to those who say that privatization of education is the only way to fix a sector that is plagued by corruption, by mediocrity and inaccessibility?
I dream of a society where every child will have a right to get education, free, compulsory, universal, which would mean that all the schools and all the universities and all the colleges are immediately taken over by the government. I dream every day that tomorrow this will happen in our country.
So you're saying no private schools at all?
Absolutely no private school anywhere on the planet Earth.
Why?
Why? It's against nature. I have not seen or studied any species on planet Earth which charges any money to teach its next generation. I have not seen even one single parent, and some of them are sitting here, who have ever told their child that I won't teach you to say mama and papa unless you give me money. If you look at the condition in India, we passed out maybe my generation, 90% of us passed out from government schools. We haven't done badly.
It was a different
India
time,
is held in
Doctor.
high esteem because of that education which we got. It's not today's education
Dr.
that
Razai,
is
was a very
keeping it
different
in
time. Demand
high
supplies
esteem.
changed, and
If
parents
you
would
look
be
at
willing to
ISRO,
bend over backwards to pay for their students. Let's get
if you
Atul.
look
Atul,
at
what would you
ISRO,
say in response,
just I want to
response to
complete
that?
this part.
Well, you know, what he's describing is utopia. It doesn't exist. I am a realist. You know, I would only say that, you know, we got patronized by communism. We got sustained by socialism, and now we want to have the benefits of capitalism, but we are unwilling to let go. You know, as a parent, I would feel that it's free market economy. You know, if the government has not done their job properly, why do you actually penalize the people who are actually putting in the effort to make the supply, you know, manage
Government
the
is
demand?
our government.
You know,
Let's.
So why do I pay the
blame
taxes?
on them?
And you said law of the land. I heard the lady say that health and education, you're not supposed to make money. Then okay, provide me the good health and you know, I pay taxes. You know, but it's not there. So there are certain people who are filling the gap.
You're
What's
willing
wrong
to pay.
in that? Yeah.
You'll pay.
And you know,
you don't mind fees being hiked, and you'll
if
pay
I
for
see
your
the quality, and even if you see even lower middle class people actually take out the kids from government schools and put them in, and they beg, borrow, scrape, because education is seen as a passport to out of poverty. You know, and I think why to hold these people back? You know, if there's a demand is there. You know, why do you expect philanthropy from people who want to invest crores of rupees and not make money? And then you at the top, you're not doing your job properly. At best, our education policy has been bad policy. You know, and then you take kudos by controlling the people who are actually providing quality, which people are willing to take, and then just keep them back. You know, so I think this
So
is no
Atul is saying if you want a service, you have to pay for it. Let me get Kiran in first. What Arun pointed out, so I'll come back to you. What Arun pointed out is the fact that you're willing to pay for a quality. My question to you is this. According to an NSSO survey, 1 out of 4 students go in for tuitions, right? So what is this? Forget about access to education. What is the quality of education we're providing to our schools in our systems today if in order to excel, you have to go in for tuitions after that?
Look, there is absolutely no doubt, and I think everyone here is agreed on the fact that the public education system has failed. And I think we are forgetting that education is not a product like any other way, you know, which is amenable to laws of economics or even of business in the way that is being discussed. It is a public good, which is why the Constitution and every Supreme Court judgment has reiterated over and over again that it is not to be seen as a commercial enterprise and therefore not be for profiteering, as has been mentioned earlier. However, of course, the Constitution also gives the private sector a right to function in the education system, but it needs to do that with certain restrictions. And I think that's what the conversation needs to be about. How does one regulate it? And that's what we need to be thinking about. How do we regulate? What are the criteria for regulation? Is it fee should be regulated? Quality should be regulated, accounts should be regulated. What sort of accountability can we bring into the private sector is really where the question lies. Today, the private sector does exist. We can't do away with it. Even the Right to Education Act has recognized that. But we cannot also give carte blanche to the private sector, particularly in areas of education and health, to function as they like. And if you're talking about fees, it's a fact that they can charge. Actually, there is no control. They can charge fees. They're not prohibited from charging fees as the public sector is, but there's got to be some regulation of it. You can't hike fees in the middle of a school year, for instance.
The issue is, you know, the people who are going to regulate it are the ones who have failed us in every department, whether it's safety, food, health, education, of course.
I think we should have the conversation on who and how it should be regulated.
25% of teachers don't turn up in government schools. There's a rote learning going on. These kids know that they can't compete eventually, so the parents actually want them to move up. So look around, we are in a mess. These are the people who are going to regulate us, who have not done anything, and these are the people responsible.
There are all kinds of models.
Now that everybody has spoken, go ahead.
We can have independent
respond to what
regulators
Atul
as well.
said.
80s, as a nation, the middle class decided to garner all the amenities for itself because it had taken a decision based on the reality that we can't give clean water to everybody, we can't give good education to everybody, we can't give food to everybody. So you have all kinds of amenities and you isolate from the real India.